All right, so if you're buying an investment property or a short-term rental in Orlando, we need to talk about insurance because it's going to be a big issue for you. I'm here with Colleen with Secured Insurance Group, and we're going to give you all the insight that you need to know.
Can't wait, it's so exciting.
And as always, this information is on the house. So Colleen, a lot of my clients assume that when they buy an investment property like an Airbnb or VRBO, that their regular insurance is just going to cover it like they do their home that they live in. What's the reality of that? Do they need special insurance, or are there gap coverages that they need to worry about?
They do need special insurance, so they need a different policy that will cover for a short-term rental exposure. So if it's a regular home policy, they're supposed to be living in there.
Right.
And if they're not, and they run the risk of, if something happens, the insurance company may not cover it, such as a slip and fall, any other loss that could happen for more people coming in and out of the home.
Okay.
So it's important that they ask the right questions, tell the insurance agent what they're going to really be doing with the home so they get the correct coverage.
Right. So is that going to cover, like, does it matter how much volume the place does, liability wise? How many people are staying?
Well, for liability, I always recommend for a short-term rental, $500,000 or more in liability. Okay. And if they can get higher liability.
Okay.
Because the more apps people are coming in, the more times something could happen.
Exactly.
So lower liability limits like 100,000 may not be enough. If somebody, let's say they have a pool, and I've heard this happening at Airbnb, somebody drowns in the pool,
right.
100,000 isn't probably going to be enough to cover that claim.
Yeah.
In the event that there is one. So they just need to make sure that they have the correct amount of coverage.
Okay, very good. Yeah, because a lot of my folks, 99% of them have pools, right?
Yes.
Unless they're buying a condo, it has
course.
a community pool, but
right.
Most of the homes have pools. Some of them I sell that are 8, 9, 10 bedrooms, so there could be 20, 25 people in a house at one time. So that's a lot of liability. You know, you could have multiple accidents all in one stay, then you multiply that times 30, 40, 50 stays a year, it really adds up quickly. So.
And then also to the fact, if they're 8, 9 bedrooms, that's a high value home.
Right.
So that means that person that bought the home is probably a high net worth person. So
Sure.
they need to protect themselves and their money and the home.
Excellent. So say I'm buying one for myself and I'm in a resort community down by Disney, like Champions Gate or Story Lake, but I live out of state, right? What kind of insurance do I actually need? And walk us through the different types of coverages, whether it's hazard or liability, or I don't know all the names. I know there's specific names for types of insurance that most pedestrians don't really understand. And like I have lingo in real estate, you have lingo in insurance. What's the nuts and bolts of it?
So if they're an out-of-state owner and they're never going to stay in the home,
correct,
they need to get a hazard policy that covers the home for it being short-term rental. So it's got exposure for rental and then liability. Most cases, the policy that covers the house will cover liability as well.
Okay.
And then they need to make sure that they have the higher liability, number one, that's the most important, and then make sure that they're covering contents, meaning they have all the items inside the home, the bedding, the beds, the couches, all the utensils, the TVs, all the pictures, all that, and they kind of need to get a value of what they feel that would cost in the event that there's a total loss, meaning there's a fire or something, so they can replace that.
Okay.
So the point of insurance is obviously to make sure they're coming least out of pocket in the event of something happening.
Right.
And they want to be able to, if they had this Airbnb set up and it was producing income for them, something happens to it, they want to be able to replace their money too. So they also need loss of income.
Wow, okay, yeah, those are really good
points. And
points.
those are included in that policy.
Okay, so let's say you mentioned contents, and I know we experience this as Floridians. We kind of understand this a little bit if you've been here a while. We're coming up on hurricane season, and every year you see social media posts, take photos of everything in your house, so you know. Is that the same thing with the short-term rental?
Yeah,
you'd want to do that?
Take photos every so often. I say a couple times per year, inside and outside of the house, because if there's a hurricane comes through or any type of claim, you want to be able to show the condition, before. And insurance companies are notorious for saying it's not covered, it was previously damaged.
Yeah.
Just make sure that you keep records of that to prevent an argument from happening.
Yeah, I would imagine an insurance company, because of the volume of people inside of an Airbnb, that the wear and tear on a chair or sofa or a bed might be more consistent.
Correct.
And that they have a good argument. The insurer would have a good argument. Hey, we've looked at your records and there's been 600 people stayed there this year. That mattress isn't worth anything anymore. You know, I can see that happening.
So you want to make sure they've got replacement cost coverage
Sure.
on it too, not actual cash value. That's important. And then also, like you said, the items in the home, take pictures. I mean, what if somebody steals something?
Right.
You know, I'm sure we don't like to think that happening, but it does. You
Yeah.
know, they're human beings. Things are going to happen. So yeah, it's just to make sure that they protect themselves.
Okay, so a little switch gears just a tiny bit here. We're in April of 2026. We're coming up on hurricane season, right? And that's the big elephant in the room for all of us that live here. Starts June 1st, goes through November 30th. How does hurricane and flood insurance kind of work in Florida, and what do people moving here from out of state really need to understand? And when do they need it? When do they maybe not need it?
So for hurricane insurance, it covers wind. So the policies are going to cover wind and it's going to cover hurricane. Flooding is a separate policy.
Okay.
So if you're in a high-risk flood zone and you get a loan, the lender is going to make you get that separate policy. Even if you're not in a flood zone, you can always get that coverage. And so that protects for rising water from the outside coming into the home.
Okay.
So meaning surge from outside, over water flow from a lake, a river, anything like that, or rain coming in too fast and it comes into the home. But even if you have flooding during a hurricane, your hurricane coverage will not cover for flood. And I know that's always a misconception and
Sure.
a confusion for people. They think, well, the flood came from the hurricane, it should cover it. And no, they're not.
Okay.
So just check the area and make sure, and then if you're concerned about it, even if you have a retention pond during the 2022 hurricane year, we had people who flooded from
Sure.
a retention pond.
Yeah.
And they weren't in flood zones.
Right.
So if you see anything like that by the house and they're concerned, they can always purchase it. And it's typically not that expensive.
If you're not,
If you're not in a flood zone.
Correct, yeah,
If
yeah.
you're near the coast, yeah, it could be, especially like Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater, those areas that had remarkable flooding in 2024, their flood policies could be extremely expensive.
Right. Okay. So, and I heard you again. I get confused sometimes too because again I don't deal with it on a daily basis. But
right.
so one thing again I hear on social media during hurricanes is wind-driven rain. How is that different from what you just explained to me?
Yeah, so
Okay.
wind-driven rain is covered under the wind or the hurricane portion on the policy.
Okay.
Because it's wind being pushed in through the cracks in the windows and the walls, so that's wind. Even though it's water coming into the home,
Right,
it's not
that's
rising
where it gets
up.
confusing, yeah.
Yeah, it's not
Okay.
rising up.
Okay.
It's being pushed in. Mhm.
Fantastic. So I think that's it for right now. I appreciate your time, and these are great responses because it's very relevant. I get people relocating here all the time and buying
course.
investment properties here, and they live out of state. So all these things are very topical, and they get misunderstood very easily. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen, for all the insight. And just so you know, I end all my videos with thanking my viewers and letting them know that all this information was on the house. Can you help me shout that out?
Can't wait, yes.
All right. So as always, everybody, this information was on the
On
house.
the house.